many years ago, I worked for a guy who grew up as a cowboy, and his family had a ranch in the Midwest of America. And he wrote a book called Riding for the Brand. And he would sometimes refer to this idea of kind of the Old West, maybe through quite rose tinted glasses. But nonetheless, there were some great mantras that came from his work. And one of them that I remember very clearly that I try to apply, not always successfully, is talk less and say more. And there were several others of these kind of mottos and mantras. But it struck me as this idea of a brand, writing for a brand, and this idea of branding. We talk about products and company identities and the brands associated with them. And we can think about that from a personal perspective as well. What do we stand for? What's important to us? What does our personal brand or company brand represent? And today's guest, Emma Donovan, is a seasoned entrepreneur, over 15 years helping people with their brand strategy. And she brings a great enthusiasm and vibrancy and authenticity to this conversation of establishing our brand. As a co-founder of a company called Dapper, she excels in creating innovative products, also in bringing together great, smart and collaborative people. And I am confident as you listen to this conversation, there'll be some great takeaways for you, not only for your company and your team as a leader, but also thinking about your own personal brand and what you're creating in that space too. Take a listen, and I trust that it's value to you. And if it is, please pass it on to somebody else who could also get some real insight and would benefit from her thoughtful wisdom. Enjoy. And it's our pleasure then to welcome Emma Donovan to the After Dinner Leadership podcast. As I've said, she is the co-founder of Dapper, a brand strategy agency. Welcome, Emma, dialing in from Cape Town today. How are you?
Thank you, Simon. Great to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So yeah, feeling great today. Thank you.
Good. And now it's our custom to ask a series of quick fire questions just to find out a little bit more about you. Are you ready for those?
Ready, let's do it.
Great. Okay. Name.
Emma Donovan.
Organization.
Dapper.
What is your favorite time of the day?
Sunrise. I love the stillness and the color in the sky.
What is a book you recommend?
The Book of Joy, Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama.
What's your favorite winter activity?
Oh, I think it's probably hiking, because you can be out all day in Cape Town without getting too hot.
Right. What is your life mantra or motto?
Only one. I think it would be to do small things with great joy and love. So to really, put passion behind what you do.
All right, I'm happy to have another. What's another one that you've got?
We talk a lot at Dapper, but it's also a personal one around quality rather than quantity. So I think that applies to so many things in life. I used to overfill my days, so it's one I'm constantly working on.
Okay, last question. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Sure, that's a good one. I think picking one is hard, but
It is.
I think authenticity would be the one I'd pick.
What is it about authenticity that attracts you to it?
I think there's so many people feel they need to wear a mask and that it's exhausting. So they show up for work, or it might even be for a partner, family, and it's putting on a facade because they feel they need to. And I just think the world needs more authenticity, and that doesn't mean you lose kindness or integrity or any of the other values that you hold dear, but to really just lean into what matters, to do and be what matters to you. And I think another part of that for me is to redefine what success looks like. It's what does success look like for you? And that is a way to show up in an authentic way. I also think it's something that gets easier as you get older. I know in my 20s, I didn't always have the confidence to be totally authentic. Whereas in my late 30s, I'm feeling more comfortable in my skin and able to do that.
Yeah. No, I get that. It is an interesting one. Would it be feasible for someone to achieve that same level of authenticity as a 22-year-old? Or is it that they have to work through that kind of early 20 phase to achieve that level of, authenticity in wherever, 30s or 40s? I do wonder about that.
It's a great question. I feel that you can be authentic. You may not have the same, what I like to call quiet confidence. So it's that balance of confidence and humility. But I do think you can be authentic. And I think it's, a lot of it is the environment you're in. Something I often say is seek out environments that bring out the softness in you, not the survival. And I think there's such a sort of hustle culture around doing more and being more and climbing ladders and things in your 20s. Whereas if you find somewhere you can thrive, that sort of softness can come through, and that I think aligns with the authenticity. So very much dependent on your environment and how self-aware you are and how important it is to you. I suppose it's something I'm very passionate about, but that doesn't mean everyone will be.
Yeah, I agree. Wonderful. And I want to go back to the Book of Joy. What is it about that sticks in your mind as a book you'd recommend?
So I read it years ago, but it really helped me distinguish between happiness and joy, where happiness is more fleeting and joy is that kind of underlying consistent state to strive for. So I think that was part of it. But then just these two incredible sort of leaders from very different worlds and cultures and religions coming together, and the humor between them I just adored. So it was beautifully narrated, and just this sort of bringing together of two totally different worlds, I think is very important to see that can happen at that level.
Great. Well, I'll add it to the list. Thank you for the recommendation.
I'm sure your list is very long after these sorts of conversations.
It's great. I love it. It's good. I'm just about to go on holiday, so I need a good book to take with me. So there we go.
Amazing. And what are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading again Atomic Habits by James Clear. I didn't apply enough the first time, and so I'm going back to revisit again. It's tied in with a lot of stuff I'm doing with clients at the moment as well, and so I want to just go to another level of understanding. You read a book, well, I read a book, and you think you've absorbed a lot, and then sometimes you read again. It's like, okay, I'm ready for another layer of application. So that's where I'm on at the moment. Yeah. Have you read that? Have you read Atomic Habits or familiar with it?
I have. Yeah. And as you're talking, I was like, it needs to go back on the list because I completely agree.
Yeah. And then someone else recommended, in fact, I've got it here. I bought it. The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists. And who knew? The guy recommended it, said there was quite a lot of learning from it, but I'm slightly skeptical. I'm gonna see if that's a holiday read or not. Anyway, I love what you've shared already, Emma. Thank you. I also am so intrigued to find out people who have established organizations, led teams, and a little bit further into their career. What are some of the lessons they wish they'd learned a bit earlier? I feel like we've got some echoes of that already in how you've answered, but I'd love to hear what are the 3 things you wish you'd learned earlier.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things I always enjoy listening to with your podcast. So it's been fun to have the opportunity to reflect on it. And I think my first one is that the most generous gift you can give someone is your full attention. And in a leadership role, this is not easy to do, but it's not about, and it goes back to my quality over quantity. It's not about how much time you give them. It's the time, making the time count that you do give to a group of people in your team or individuals. And I think what we've really strived for at DAPA is creating space as a sort of core pillar, but the things we want to create space for are authentic alignment, which I can come back to, honest conversation, and constructive feedback. So I think that sort of encompasses the why behind giving someone your full attention.
Okay, good. We will come back to that, I'm sure. What's the second point?
The second one is to define what success looks like. And if I speak from personal experience, I think I'm often guilty of having high expectations rather than being really clear on intentions, actions, and habits. So that's been a shift and something I've had to learn and grapple with rather than something that always came naturally to me. And I think it feeds into my third one, which is that discipline will take you places motivation can't. And I think that's probably one that it comes up quite often, but it's just so easy to, on a good day, have all the motivation in the world, but then it'll plummet again. And that is natural. And I think to not feel guilty about that's also important, to just acknowledge that's life, the ebb and flow. Whereas if you really lean into healthy habits, you can be more disciplined and you can create accountability structures for yourself and for your team. So that's probably the one that I've not been consistent with, but feels a really important lesson I've learned around leadership.
Great. Oh, there's some richness there. Thank you. And echoes of Atomic Habits in the third item for sure. I feel some connection there with what I'm currently reading. Good. Okay, Emma, I'd love to go back to the start of those then. And this most generous gift is about giving somebody full attention. How do you do it? Like, we've got a ton of stuff going on, things whizzing around, our heads, and we've got telephones and notifications, all that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on how we give people full attention?
So, I mean, you've said it for me. It's turning off the notifications. So I have focus slots every day in my calendar. My team can see them, and I am not available. And if a client is impatient with me and said, you haven't answered your phone, I said, no, because I've been giving someone my full attention and now I'm giving you mine. So it's calling them out, which I'm very happy to do, maybe too directly sometimes. But I think it's just getting people to see the value of time again and not multitask. And again, I have good days and bad days. I'm certainly not getting it right all the time. But I really do try and stick to that and encourage my team too. So we focus on important rather than urgent. Some advice I got, which I love, is to spend the first 2 hours of your day on what is most important. So I'm a morning person. I often work from 5 or 6 in the morning, and I have a couple of hours before I check email, before I look at WhatsApps or, messages on Slack. And that is a game changer for me. And then also, to go back to my point around, it doesn't have to be a lot of time. So if someone asks for an hour of your time, say, you know what, I don't have an hour, but I have half an hour. And could you send me the talking points or the agenda ahead of time so that I can give it some thought? So those are probably my top two, is the focus slots, and then the giving people less time but not making it feel rushed. I think that's also important, is to say, how is your day, and how's your daughter doing, or how is your run, rather than just jumping straight in.
Again, there's a sense of counterintuitive aspect to that, isn't it? In terms of, right, I'm going to give you less time, so right, let's cram more in. So what have you done to have the discipline to create that space? What are some of the methods you're using as a leader to allow that?
So I think the structure, which was sort of that discipline piece, but I also think it's about, one of our values is to cultivate joy. So it is a genuine connection that we have within the team. There's that sort of being firm but fair, creating space for learning and mistakes. We always say fail forward. So absolutely make a mistake, but get up and learn from it. So I think all of those things create a culture where people don't feel rushed. They know there's limited time, but that it's doing what matters.
Great. Yeah. And how do you find new people in your team integrate into that culture that you're creating as a leader? How do you help somebody come in that perhaps has been in a very different working environment? How have you helped them to integrate?
Yeah, the first comment I often get is that there's a lot to take in, because we have, as a young business, there's lots of products, there's lots of processes, and it's all sort of half documented. I hate to say, but it's still sort of finding its feet.
Yeah.
And another comment I get is, I always say I don't want to micromanage, but I am going to edit the tone of your emails, for example, to begin with. And they're like, okay, well, why? And I'm like, because tone's really important, and Dapper is not corporate or formal. So we are professional, but we're engaging. And I think having those conversations up front really helps, because, like, especially if someone's come out of a corporate role or maybe out of university, where you do
Yeah.
use a very formal writing style, and that just doesn't suit us or our clients. So that's the kind of thing, again, open communication, explaining why we're changing it. So I think that helps. And then just a big one I always say is don't clock watch. Like, maximize the time you have to do your best job, and done is better than perfect. So we work on a 6-hour day, which sounds very luxurious, but it's 6 focused hours, and the
Yeah.
rest of the day is yours. So it's a very different culture. I hope more businesses will embrace this type of culture, because I really think it's a healthy way to work, but it does take a bit of adjusting.
Yeah. Could you share a little bit more on the 6-hour structure of the day? What does that typically look like, or what's the premise behind that?
So if I start with the second half of your question, it really stemmed from me running 2 businesses and almost getting to sort of burnout point. I was like, I can do this. So many people do it. And then I was like, but why am I doing it? I'm not giving anyone my full attention. I'm not prioritizing my own health and life. So I think that was a motivator when I went down to just focusing on Dapper, which is where I really want to be, and going, okay, how do I avoid that happening in future, like that burnout, exhaustion feeling? But also, how do I encourage the sort of generation coming behind me to have healthier habits younger? I think that's a motivation for me, is to set the right example, to lead by example, but also to learn from, I think, a lot of my colleagues in their 20s are naturally better at working less, and not in I don't say that in a critical way. Like, I think they're really good at saying, right, I'm going to the beach now, or I'm, having breakfast with a friend or my mom, and still being really dedicated and present. And I think that there's often a lot of criticism around that, but maybe misplaced, when people are getting their work done
Yeah, I
and
agree.
really focused. So it's the
Yeah.
same as, giving bonus leave over Christmas holidays for us in South Africa. That's, midsummer, and we close for 10 days, and it's not using your annual leave. It's a thank you for, the commitment and making the year a success as a team.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. One of the things that that I've built into our organization is for them to be able to take a week of to do voluntary work that isn't part of their annual leave as well. And
Love that.
thankfully, I've got a team who are very active in their communities and are giving of themselves, and I think it makes them a better colleague when they're doing that, a better human, frankly. And so to support that, so they don't have to feel compromised in terms of, well, that's holiday time with my family or that kind of thing. They can take it and still get paid, and learn a lot in the process, as well as helping people in some way, which we've enjoyed. Yeah, yeah. And I do that
Yeah.
too. And I'm running a youth camp this summer, as one of the leaders of a youth camp. So I'm excited about that, and also kind of slightly apprehensive too, keeping 50 young men occupied for 3 days. There we go. Yeah.
Wow. No, that sounds
Looking
incredible.
forward
And
to
I
it.
think we might adopt that ourselves. It's a wonderful
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Well, I'm really inspired by that piece. I'd love to just move on to your second point, which is around defining what success looks like. And perhaps even if we jump straight into, what are some practical ways that you've found to help people to do that?
So one of the ways we do it is to do an exercise called Stop, Start, Continue, where you write all of your team members' names down the left-hand side of the page, including your own, and then across the top, the 3 columns, Stop, Start, Continue. And you literally write down, and again, in a way that's constructive, you give feedback on what each person should stop, start, and continue doing within the role and their team. And I think it leads to my what I said around expectations, because it's so easy to have miscommunication, to not be aligned. Whereas when you have that really constructive open space as a team, I think that's huge as a foundation for the trust, the expectation setting, and then to really have like productive focus slots on what are the intentions and the actions we need to take in order to reach our goal. So clarity on the goal and how to get there, I think is really key, and having a roadmap. One more point to add to that is it's really useful if you can have an external facilitator help you map that out, so you don't go down rabbit holes and see the next shiny object along the way.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So that's from a team's perspective, and I really like that structure and approach, and the wisdom of having somebody to support that so that people can feel safe to be honest with each other. Maybe my question when I asked it was thinking more from a personal perspective rather than a team perspective, actually. And so, do you have any thoughts on that? What does the success look like for me? And thinking about my own brand and this type of thing, how do I define what my brand should look like?
So it's a great question. I could talk about it all evening, so please stop me when I get carried away. But I feel that clarity on what matters to you is so often overlooked or seen as something I'll do later in life. And for me, your brand story and narrative and sort of goals evolve as you do. So it's not to say set what success looks like and that's it, and I've got to stand by that no matter what. It's saying right now where I'm at in my life and my career, this is what success looks like. This is what matters to me. And then to come back and to relook at that. I think journaling is a wonderful place to start, just to know structure. You're not trying to get anything out of it. You're just getting your thoughts down on paper. We offer the Brand Yourself online course, which is helping people figure that out. So it's prompts and questions, and I'm sure there's lots of great resources like that out there that can just get you thinking. I think often it's someone asking the right questions.
Emma, you mentioned in that finding yourself the idea of an online course, and you mentioned this as an online course called Brand Yourself. Could you talk a little bit about that and how it can help people to work out their personal brand more effectively?
Absolutely. It's a course we designed last year based on our flagship product, which is called the Dapper 9. And essentially, Brand Yourself is a way to build your own brand, a 3-month course with video tutorials, worksheets, a lot of sort of different ways. We bring in Miro boards and all sorts of different platforms and tech, and it's just a really user-friendly, fun experience. There is accountability from Team Dapper, and the idea is it's where self-discovery meets brand development. So building the confidence, the self-awareness, the authenticity, everything we spoke about, but then making it really practical. How do I package that? How do I reimagine my CV? How do I have a LinkedIn profile that is more than just a digital CV and is actually a space to connect and learn and grow? How do I build the confidence to be a podcast guest or to start a blog? So it's really, really practical, but also requires you to be a little bit vulnerable and open to the process. So yeah, something I'm very passionate about and excited to have out in the world.
Great. Clearly I can hear your passion for it, and I'm sure a lot of hours spent crafting and creating that for the benefit of your customers there, which is great. And we're going to have a discount code in the show notes that you can use to access that if you're interested as well, which is lovely. Okay, so let's get to this last point around discipline then. Discipline will take you places motivation cannot. And I remember these questions were, what are 3 lessons you wish you'd learned earlier? So you hinted at maybe this is one you're still working on a little bit more, maybe the other 2. What's the backstory to this one?
So I don't know if you know the Clifton Strengths Assessment, but it essentially helps you
Yes.
identify your, 5 things that you should lean into. And I have got activator and ideation. So I'm really good at getting things started and the kind of creativity and coming up with ideas. Don't put me in the middle of the process.
Right.
So I think that's where I really need the discipline. I need the accountability, and I value it so much. It's just not intuitive to me. But I've learned that just, the sort of spontaneity and intuition I bring is not enough to be the leader I want to be. I want to show up consistently. I want to, as I said, set the right example. So as much as I believe in the Clifton Strengths model of lean into your strengths, I think there are things you need to work on around that. And maybe it's so that your strengths can shine. So by having discipline and structure, I can spend more time doing what I enjoy, which is the creative part of it, coming up with new products. I've got Relator, so I love getting to know people. So yeah, I think it gives me the space to do that more.
Perhaps we could just tackle this idea that maybe people would see discipline as a constraint and a straitjacket. You're limiting my freedoms because it's like I just want to go anywhere, do anything, and that kind of stuff. Do you kind of get the vibe of what I'm saying? It's like what's the merits of a disciplined life, and why can't I just have these motivational dreams? I'm polarizing it a little bit, and I know they're not on the other ends of a spectrum, but just some thoughts around that. What did it, if someone's thinking along those lines?
So one of the sort of personal mantras I didn't mention is discipline gives you freedom, that I live by. And for me, it is discipline doesn't constrain me in any way. So for example, I don't take meetings before 10 in the morning because if the sun's out, I want to go for a swim in the sea, or I may feel like yoga instead of gym, and that's at a different time. So the discipline is committing to not having meetings before 10. And sometimes discipline means saying no. So it's no, I'm not available. I don't need to explain why. That is, those are the slots that I'm available. So that's the discipline to bring what I love into my day. If I start my day with exercise, I'm a much better person to be around for everyone. So it's the discipline on both sides, the personal life and the sort of professional space, I think would be an example of exactly that, giving me the freedom.
Great wisdom there. I need to listen to that again. I've set out earlier this year to use Fridays as I'll call them a die day rather than a Friday. But the idea is that I would use Fridays to do the things that I would do if I found out I had 6 months to live. And clearly what I've discovered in this process, this experiment, is that I would work a lot if I found out I had 6 months to live. My original concept of implementing that has been challenging. The business is growing, the team are growing and needs a lot of attention, and I've struggled to do that. We've had some success, but more often than not they get cancelled or not, and genuinely I think in many instances that's the right decision. But I am still in this kind of quandary, this kind of tension of knowing that I need that kind of renewal and that space to just think, and yet the team needs a large chunk of me and the clients, I want that too. So that idea of saying no and the consequences of that has really brought that into sharp attention recently for me. Yeah. Come on, help me out, Emma. What's your thoughts?
I can only share from experience, but I used to try and do this exact same thing like on a Friday, and I realized it was putting so much pressure on Monday to Thursday that it wasn't worth it. And so I shifted it to saying, I want moments of joy every day. I want time to recharge and stay energized every day. And of course, that doesn't happen. There are days where it doesn't, but it felt more achievable. And I didn't have the sort of guilt or stress around taking a half day or a whole day for, whatever it was. So that may work. Or just to be realistic about how much of the day is realistic and how do you want to spend it?
Yeah, I think that's where I've settled at the moment, is more a kind of a die afternoon, Friday afternoon, rather than a die day. And I'm very happy.
Yeah.
That's a very happy place to be. And there's
Yeah.
periods where I'm going into a period now where I'm going on holiday, and August has got a lot more kind of space for time like that. But I want to establish something that's more disciplined and more routine, because it does help me a lot. And I love your suggestion around maybe chunking it down into days, into parts of days, rather than one big chunk at the end of the week. Yeah. Very helpful, Emma. Thank you so much. Now, you have spoken about brand, I guess. And one of the phrases that I picked up from your work is this idea of having an unforgettable echo. And I love that as a phrase. And I'd love it if you could just talk to us about what that means.
Absolutely. I think what pops into my mind as you said it is the idea of not everyone likes being in the limelight, but rather being able to shine the light on others. So that's part of it for me, is that ripple effect that a strong brand can have, and helping to elevate other people's brands. But I think also just realizing that your story is out there, and it's up to you whether you own it, because that sort of echo or that lasting impression is not just, as I said, your digital footprint. It's how you meet someone in person. It is how you come across in a talk or an interview. And there's so many touch points that together weave the narrative of your brand. And that echo or ripple effect for me is both forwards and backwards. You can constantly evolve your brand as you go and shape that story.
Great. And what are you working on in terms of your brand at the moment? What's the echo element that you're working on?
Is that for Emma's brand or Dapper's?
Emma's.
So I think it's creating space to do, like, practice what I preach. So I spend a lot of time one-on-one sessions with clients and looking at a lot of the things we've talked about today. And I still find myself working on the wrong things, or not booking in enough holidays, so it's really about that authenticity piece of continuing to do the work, build my brand, make sure I have the right coaches and mentors in my life. I think it's something as a leader I'm very aware of, is needing to still be learning from others. So as much as I love leading a young dynamic team, I want to make sure I still am learning. So I think that's a big part of my brand, is to keep that humility, that thirst for learning, and just constantly, I guess, building on self-awareness. I think that's a really key part of having an authentic brand.
Yeah. That's rich. I wish you the best of success as you continue to do that. That's lovely. I would love to just kind of pull this together, and I've taken a lot from today. One of the things that has been helpful from a very practical point of view is just thinking about my die days and how I can work on that. But I love this idea of generously gifting somebody your full attention. And as I'm confident you mature enough to read between the lines, it's been quite a busy couple of months for us as an organization, and I'm conscious I can do a lot better at that, particularly for my colleagues, not so much my clients. I hope they get the best version of that. Sometimes my colleagues I don't know have done, and I can do better there. So I appreciate that reminder of really being able to achieve that. So thank you. That's been really helpful. And the Book of Joy is also something I will purchase on Amazon after this call. Okay. Emma, what's the takeaway for you from this conversation today?
I think one, if I can just reflect back to you, is that you are incredibly good at giving your full attention. I've listened to previous podcast episodes you've done, and I think today you just have a real gift for picking up on the sort of juicy or interesting bits of a story and pulling them out and unpacking them. So it's really just a reflection and a compliment, and something I've really enjoyed. But you have given me undivided attention, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you for holding that space.
It's a pleasure. I've learned a lot in the process, so that's great. Thank you. I'm sure our listeners will have done too. So, Emma, I wish you the best of success. Just a reminder, there'll be in the show notes a discount code with regards to the Brand Yourself online course. So make good use of that. And Emma, I hope we have another conversation again, whether it's 18 months, 2 years from now, that we can revisit and see where you're at with your business and you personally growing as a leader, and the lessons that we'll continue to learn in that process too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And wish you the very best of success. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Our after dinner leadership conversation is finished. Our guest has left, and you're still here. Now, of course, you're very welcome. I'm glad that you found the conversation to be engaging. There's a few things that I'd like to ask you to do before you do leave. The first one of those is, if you can stop and think about somebody who you think would enjoy this conversation, a friend, a colleague, perhaps an aspiring leader. The second thing is to stop and hit subscribe or follow. And then the third thing is to start doing something. Perhaps there's a little idea or a concept that we've been discussing today that you think you could apply even a little bit tomorrow, tonight, and to put it into action. I encourage you to use this as a catalyst to do something different, do something more interesting, do something more exciting. And thank you so much for joining us. And please tune in again for another after dinner leadership conversation. You can leave now. I need to go and do the dishes.